Yeah, so now where this is going to leave us to, and we are kind of, we have got a seemingly everybody want to become the as if the inventor, or shall I say the discoverer of new discovery, and sort of the materialist scientists, they had their own kind of theories to suggest that they can generate life out of inanimate matters, and somewhat that did not bode well with those sort of communities who started to think that okay, it must be other way around. Is because there is a life, and because life is there to experience all these sort of experiences of those physicalist physics and phenomenons. That means they are these secondary, is because of this kind of a biological processes, this biological uh, let's say composition, and the sort of biological creatures are what is this universe led by, and that is the kind of another kind of somewhat other dimension, somewhat other pole. Yeah, so we have a north pole and south pole, and somewhat the mass has gathered in, and they gathered some momentum that no, forget about this physics and matter. It's because biology, it's because of the creatures like us who have got this all this biological processes, the metabolism and all these sort of things. Because of these universe do exist, universe the way it is, because of this biological uh, entities. Yeah, so it's kind of these proponent of this anthropic reasoning and biocentrism. They are kind of, they want to put biology as a first, and the matter and the phenomenon out of these matters are the secondary byproduct of our engagement with these matters. Yeah, so this is a kind of a somewhat is going outside the boundary of the our experience. Somewhat they are overstepping and kind of claiming too much and taking too much credit out of the kind of the fact is that the fact is this much, and they are going bit more, and they are kind of coming to that sort of conclusion that it's because of the biological creatures that the universe is the way it is, because of this sort of experiences of those biological creatures. And that is somewhat, and they do justify this by saying that okay, all these universe do exist, and they are in a right. Why this universe the way it is? Look, the temperature is just for us to survive. Look, all these kind of the gravity is just right for the biology to exist. All these, if the gravity was slightly more by some sort of fraction of this constant, it would have collapsed. The what is called the galaxy would not have formed. Or if that constant was slightly more, then the universe, the galaxy would have contracted, and it would have crushed all of us, all these creatures, because this universe is made by us. This universe is just right for us to That's why it is guided, it's governed by our existence, not the other way around. That is what the theory of biocentrism, and there are seven principles of biocentrism, which I may touch upon a bit later. Although I will not go into that sort of kind of supporting their theories, but I would just trying to give that sort of a, let's say, meat on the bone. Yes, shall I say this? Biology is not the kind of a ultimate. It's not the. It doesn't describe the experience. The experience is derived. Experience is in the mind. It's not in biology. Biology is somewhat, biology is, we cannot call it kind of a purely atomic, sort of molecular. It doesn't go follow that sort of purely materialistic, that sort of formulas of Legos and the complexity, and that sort of building a car, or that sort of that something you can produce in a factory. It's not that. Biology is not governed by that sort of kind of mechanism or processes. Rather, it has got a mechanism. It is governed by the law of nature, where the biology has got a property of, let's say, autonomy, so certain autonomy that doesn't need that sort of input from millions of different directions. Say, for example, you have seen a building that is made of millions of bricks and the concrete, and that sort of tiles, roof, and everything, carpet, stairs. So that is how the objects in a material universe are made of. Biological creatures do not follow that sort of rule. They have got their some autonomy. They do not need to be. They are somewhat monolithic. They are not taking input from millions of different, let's say, objects. They are not composite, in a sense that you cannot just inject one cell and make that cell a part of your body. It does grow organically. Again, this organic is kind of a bit abstract. So what I would like to say is that biology does not abide by that rule of putting too many Legos and building a house. Yeah, it doesn't follow that sort of rule. So it does have that sort of autonomy. It does have that sort of some sort of independence from each other. Yeah. So this biology is kind of that sort of having that sort of character of, I heard the word dissociation. Probably that might be quite apt here. So that is the quite long summary of this two seemingly quite interesting documentaries on the channel 4 on the probably the most profound questions of our all times. What we still don't know, how we real, and why are we here. So that seemed to somewhat drive us to, okay, if we are not in control of all this sort of if we cannot manufacture living creatures, if we cannot manufacture experiences, and surely this science is failing. science is somewhat science is not a success story, and that's what that's what is giving support to those people who are somewhat surrendering their kind of a all their kind of a creativity and their analytical abilities to the higher dimensional reality, as if they are saying that since all these 2000 years we have been trying extremely hard to kind of make our life easier by means of all these discoveries, and we are trying to somewhat, the scientists have done everything they could. They could not solve this problem of consciousness. They could not bring this in they could not create consciousness out of inanimate matter. Surely they are fundamentally wrong, because they didn't listen to the God, and that because it's not the science that creates all these creatures, the experiences like human beings or all these animals. It's a product of God. God is giving all this. God is watching and controlling all these experiences, and that's what the intelligent design, the theory of intelligent design, and the theory of kind of supreme being that are injecting consciousness into our into our experiences. They are fueling they are fusing the consciousness and all these experiences, the feeling, perception, and here you go. You are fundamentally wrong. What you're not looking in the right place. Look at above. We are all we are controlled by that particular that is the supreme. That is where there's all these things are happening from there. You are looking completely, you are deluded. That's not this is not what you should be doing. You need to listen to that. You need to pray to that. And when you are praying that, and you are kind of going to that sort of spiritual institution, that's where you get united with that sort of divine beings, and that's where you get insight into the reality. That is what somewhat is we have that sort of some people, they are subscribing to that sort of notion that universe is far too complex for the human's intelligence and for kind of people like us to fathom. It's just far beyond, and it needs that sort of grand, that type of sort of a mind, that sort of cosmic mind, yeah. So shall I say that sort of something super normal, supernatural, something sublime that can have that sort of all these kind of experiences. Look at them. It is perfect. They are perfectly synchronized. This can only be made possible by a grand framework and a grand design and a grand type of network, yeah. And that's what they are subscribing to. And what they are saying is that, you see, that is the reality. We are just here to do the part that we have been given a role, and we are living in that sort of, we are playing that sort of a virtual reality type of games that you press a button and that creature moves here and there, and we are just following the kind of each and every moment we are following the kind of, we are remote controlled, we are in the simulation that we are running, the codes have been running in us, to have that sort of speech, that sort of experience, all these tests, it is all pre-programmed. It is all kind of that's all life is. It is all programmed by the sort of super intelligence of a that's divine being. Yeah, that's what the concept of God and that sort of supreme being. Yeah, that sort of and this is what the biological somewhat it transcended the biology, and then it got fused into that sort of somewhat, because it is far too complex to be managed by the sort of biology and physics and the science alone. It is far too complicated for us to kind of to be in that driving seat. Yeah, it must be something supernatural. Yeah, so somewhat. I mean, I would. It's just to argue whether this is right and that is wrong. And this is I am taking that sort of very, let's say, a very let's say I mean I do take an objective perspective. It's just simply whatever are being proposed, whatever theories and methodologies and thinking that have been proposed, and people are carrying them as if these are their, let's say, their own invention. People really like their name. They want to promote their brand. They want to somewhat want to be famous, and they want to say, I developed this theory of consciousness. Look how supreme this theory is. I am the creator of that. I am the creator of that theory that nobody has managed to solve. I am the far more important. I am here against all these people because they were stupid. They didn't understand the problem. They were caught up in that sort of all these superficial ideas, and they did not know the reality. And here you go. I am proposing. I am kind of coming up with that sort of something that they couldn't never imagine. And this is what the science, and this is what the kind of the society and the society as at large is all about. It's just they are trying to come up with that sort of very kind of I would not say it is they consider it is a healthy practice. It is always evolving to improvise and lead to better theories, and to come up with to come closer to the reality in that sort of small incremental steps. Any pursuit that by serious thinking, by some sort of analysis, by observation, all these things are making us better and better in addressing those sort of real challenges. And that is what they call science. And science is not about kind of our experiences. It's not about subjectivity. Science is something that should not be muddled with subjectivity. Science has got the authority in its own domain to answer the reality by purely objective and non mental or non, let's say, subjective methods. Yeah, so they are saying that science has been so successful, and it has been so, it has been very, very rigorous, and it has got such a solid basis and the methods of inquiry that, science is the only way to arrive at the truth. And look, this is science. No other approaches, no other thing can explain this behavior of subatomic particle, or this is the phenomenon that we're experiencing. Only science can explain that. See, this is science. And all others are just speculations. All other approaches, everything, spiritual traditions, all this biology, everything, they are whatever you, let's call it, some sort of spiritual meditation and that sort of, these are all speculations. They do not have any kind of solid, that sort of theoretical foundations, and they give so much of weight to science, that science, as if science is the only tool in the arsenal, only kind of the let's say weapon to let's say to refute that sort of dogmatism and that sort of kind of that belief that are kind of too subjective or too fuzzy. They're saying that science is science is there to remove the fuzziness out of all these sort of notions, and to bring to the table the reality that cannot be refuted. So that is a bit of I think this somewhat science is given too much credit, and as if science can answer a lot of on very, very difficult mystery of our experiences somewhat, and I suppose somewhat they're thinking that by describing the nature in terms of mathematical equations, by means of experimentation, by means of observation, the science is able to capture and answer all these sort of experiences that we would like to solve, and as we want to come to the truth. Yeah, somewhat, and it just it doesn't seem to go anywhere. I mean, it doesn't take take a genius to figure out. We are not refuting the progress made in terms of discoveries to identify some natural phenomenon that were lying potent in the nature. Yeah, so, and scientists are very good in unraveling the patterns hidden in the nature, and rationalizing the kind of the processes and making, say, formalizing the observation and binding them into some rigorously testable algorithms or mechanism that can be falsifiable, or it can be it can be tested for sanity. Yeah. So that's why that because of that sort of ability of science, it has become de facto tool for answering the question of whether we can really come to the truth by using science. Yeah. So it is interesting, really, and I do a lot of science and the research and that sort of exploration of the phenomenon in terms of tools that we can use. So, and I do see the power that the science can have, that gives that sort of so much of success that it has brought to the human, let's say, human history. Yeah. So, and in one of those, so what happened is that this I mentioned about this, where is the science going, and whether it is really the case that science is going to make a success out of the history, and will it continue? If it continues the same path, is it likely to succeed, or is it kind of it has to make a fundamental rethink of its approach? And that's where the kind of the current, as I mentioned, the science has somewhat physics is hitting dead end at the very large scale as well as in the very minute scale. Is they cannot simply join this and kind of seemingly paradoxical states that they have no way of coming to any sort of a definite conclusion. Is that whatever they are proposing are turning out to be some sort of fictions and some sort of speculation, and it is not answering that sort of a reality of our experiences. It's just and this is what is happening in 2023. The Nobel Prize in Physics was given to 3 scientists: Anton Zeilinger, Alan Aspect, and John Clauser. For them to demonstrate that this the locality, notion of locality, and that sort of is a notion of locality is false. It is fundamentally untenable idea. I mean, it's just locality is. It may have survived the time of Newton. It may have survived the time of, let's say, Einstein, but it is not finding any ground that the locality does fall apart when you go down to the subatomic level of this quantum, let's say, subatomic particle that do not abide by the rule of localism. They do not follow the rule that you hit one atom, the next atom will be excited. It doesn't follow that sort of rule. So the rule of I mentioned about the distance, it doesn't want to stay in the boundary of space and time. Yeah, just completely. And they've proven that by showing that they fire that sort of neutrinos from seemingly two spacecraft from a very big distance. Simultaneously, they were they had entangled particles, and they fire those sort of neutrinos, those subatomic particles, independently, because they are so far apart in their distance, and they fired their particles into distance like 500 miles apart, somewhere in Switzerland and somewhere in Vienna or somewhere. And what they found was that no matter how many times they fire those particles, they have immediately influenced the state of each other, which is thousands of 100 times faster than the speed of light. So 500 miles, even the light takes few seconds, and they did the exact measurement, and those particles are coming in the exactly in a state that they are defining the each other's state by just simply act of measuring. And this is somewhat this is saying is that all these particle, the notion of particle having bound in this certain geographic location or being confined within this boundary of space and time is a flaw. There is a flaw in this particle model, that your very notion that the particle occupies a territory or location in space, one particle here, another particle there, the notion here and there is fundamentally flawed. And that is what that was Nobel Prize was given to discover that. And if these two things, these are not particles, then if what can explain their seeming kind of what is called their seeming dependence. So they are dependently, I mean, I would not want, I am keen to use the word dependent origination. This arise simultaneously, this arise. This is the praticca samutpada. Yeah. So with arising of this arises. With the ceasing of this ceases. You see, dependent origination, this is the perfect example of dependent origination. And this is what is happening. They are dependently origin. This being this arises. This not being, this ceases. This is exactly what the Buddha said. Yeah. Somewhat, I mean, we cannot bring into picture what Buddha said to explain that. Yeah. These are, you cannot, I mean, we can see them in our mind. We can say in our observation of mind, we do not see particles. We see our experiences. And what we see in our experience is that we see, let's say I'm not seeing, we observe feeling, and immediately with this feeling, we see there is the reaction to that feeling. Immediately. There is a feeling and there is a reaction. There is a perception and there is consciousness. And that is so this property of entanglement, it is now it's been proven that entanglement does hold, and it has been consistently been proven in countless labs. Although I know there are some labs that are trying to somewhat try to refute that sort of experiment by doing other counter experiments. So I mean, we don't need to buy any of those theories. Yeah. So what I'm saying is that, okay, this particle, that particle in the physical lab, we have seen, and the world has seen, it has been documented, it has been published, it has been, all these evidences do exist, and everybody buys that. Now, what is true in our experience, you don't need anybody giving you certificate that, hey, see that this Anton Zeilinger, this experiment, you cannot refute that. What you have done must be wrong. Yeah, look at this. This is evidence. We don't need to buy that sort of kind of a, or somebody giving you that sort of a, what is called we don't need to buy that sort of authority. We simply, whatever you have said, your theory, your authority remains with you. You can impose that authority to me. I would accept that. That's fine. But you cannot control, you cannot change the observation in my mind, where I saw a feeling, and with feeling I saw reaction. I saw the contact on the sense door, I saw the feeling. There is a feeling, I saw the reaction. My sense door, I can see the vision is hitting my eye, and immediately with that vision, I am seeing, I am perceiving that, I am perceiving the color of that, and I am making that sort of I am already starting to analyze that, and I'm producing the reaction. All these sort of things immediately occur, and that is, you can call it entanglement. And Buddha called this dependent origination. Simultaneously, you got one phenomenon, immediately linked to that phenomenon is another phenomenon. That's what the dependent origination is. Dependent origination did not claim too much about the universe. Yeah, Buddha did not claim that it applies to matter. It applies to the subatomic particles. Although some Buddhists, some Mahayana Buddhists or Tibetan Buddhists, they are quite keen. They are keen to say that, oh, you see, what you have done in your lives. Actually, Buddha did that. They are trying to kind of say, okay, science and that sort of a Buddhism is coming to, they are really coming to concord in terms of describing and accounting for the nature of reality in a such a very close and accurate manner, and they want to take, I mean, not the credit, but at least they want to somewhat show that Buddha's approach was scientific, and as if kind of it's like trying to accept the authority of science and being associated with the science. You see, we don't need to kind of submit to the authority of science. Science is as it in its own domain can be an authority, and by linking your theory, by linking your let's say belief, or shall I say, and some sort of studies of that scriptures, and I say, okay, because our scripture also says that, and we are very close to what scientific, and it's just trying to kind of we don't need to we don't need to go into that sort of a, let's say, it's helpful bringing science and Buddhism into, let's say, a close association, close relation. It's not bad. It's a good, and it's a really, I think it's a noble idea. But what I'm saying is that science and the sort of observation of mind, they can remain independent, and they can be somewhat, they don't need to support, they don't need the support of each other. Yeah, so it's kind of our mind, our experiences, they do follow a very, very specific pattern. I would say that pattern that are completely different from the pattern in the nature. Yeah. So and that's what the physics is trying to capture, that by means of maths, by means of observation, by means of experimentation, by means of analysis, by means of all that sort of theories, and what these are the tools that are available at disposal for science. But in terms of mind does not need, does not have these sophisticated tools. So our minds, unfortunately, we have only one mind, and our experiences, we have got a mind, and we have got mindfulness. So I will go through that a bit later in terms of how we unravel the nature of mind by observation. Yeah, so I will go through that. So hopefully this brings a little bit of kind of context to kind of our why we should not be dogmatically asserting that the science is the only tool for arriving at the truth. So hopefully this has given some sort of kind of a perspective that we should go beyond these means of science to look at the nature of mind. Yeah, actually, it's what science is science has got a blind spot, big blind spot, or elephant in the room, if you can call it, that science is completely oblivious. Scientific studies have alienated the mind and the inquiry of mind because it did not want to be associated with something too speculative, too unpredictable. They consider mind to be something completely, let's say, arbitrary. Yes, so they consider the domain of mind is just simply, science has to stay away from that sort of speculation, and so that sort of completely, it should not bring that sort of domain of mind, which is the domain of spiritualism. It's just, it's science should not be working in that sort of superficial, that sort of completely superficial, that sort of phenomenon which doesn't have any empirical evidences. So they do tend to keep science away from that sort of mental, that sort of consciousness domain of mind. Yeah. So and I did not I did have a quick look at this. That's what drove me to look at bit more on this. What is the relation between the science and the sort of spiritualism? Why people are so much intrigued by kind of looking in the domain of where those two things are being looked at in a side by side, and what sort of discoveries or what sort of insights they are having. So maybe you have seen it's everywhere. It's in YouTube, and I really found it interesting. It's called Awakening, the film in 2023, where I think the two scientists, Donald Hoffman and Rupert Sapiro. So Rupert is a kind of a scientist, but he is coming from he considers mind and consciousness as being the kind of a way out of all this misery and the suffering, and the sort of spiritualism is the way to go. And I assume he does practice some form of meditation, and he has got some connection with this introspection, and he does talk a lot about first person perspective. And Donald Hoffman, he is a neuroscientist, and he has got a lot of credit in his name to describe the process of consciousness that transcends the notion of matter and physicalism. And this movie is about 1 hour long, and it's very accessible, and it does strike well with anyone who does not necessarily want to buy that sort of a pure kind of a devotional religious views, but with some sort of healthy criticism of those sort of kind of blind faith, but somebody who is aware of the discovery in the science, and who is still not convinced by what the science is saying, to take it for granted. So this is really is interesting, and I found it. It does talk quite a lot about the nature of mind, the delusion that we constantly carry with us, that the notion of I, that the kind of having that sort of personal taking experiences personally, and having that sort of let's say taking something bit too much in terms of giving that so much of authority to mind. Yeah. So and somewhat this awakening movies seem to it seemed to go a bit support that sort of view that mind and matter, that dualism, that these are two separate things, and there is no such thing as dualism. And what is happening is there is one single experience that is non-dual, which seem to align well with that sort of Advaita, Vedanta type of philosophies, where they do say that the notion the notion world and me is false, and there is just, there is this dualism is the distinction between the world and you is the cause of suffering. And when this duality fades and it becomes one, then it is your eternal, it is your essence of who you are, your undistorted consciousness, your oneness with the universe, and your culmination of your life or your all these kind of suffering is that when you become one with the universe is the kind of the ultimate way out of suffering. And that is what this movie is all about. And that's where Rupert is kind of, he seemed to have experienced some sort of deep experiences to confirm that is the reality. Is that's how you become free from the kind of all this kind of, let's say, the kind of the kind of the way to let go of and be free of suffering and find that sort of true happiness. Yeah. And that seemed to give that sort of too much of credit to that sort of kind of what is called universal consciousness and something supreme, ultimate reality. His consciousness is something that transcends the space-time, that transcends the matter, that transcends the kind of all these our experiences, all these experiences, all these inner feeling, all these perceptions, all these notions that we have, these are all fabrications. These are let's say, these are false notions and somewhat distortion of that ultimate universal consciousness, which is non-dual, which is is not unmanifested, which is in each and every being, and it is the source of ultimate happiness. Somewhat that is the message from him, and in that movie, then that is contributed somewhat. Donald Hoffman's contribution in that line of thinking is that Donald Hoffman is saying is that, and I mentioned earlier, space-time, matter, physicalism has hit dead end on the both sides, on the micros, in the nanoscale, in the subatomic particle level, and on the grand scale of universe and all this cosmic scale. It's just they cannot explain the experiences that goes, it just become non-real. Universe does not become real when you start to question all these galaxies and also trillions of visual universe. So we to think that we are living in a material universe doesn't hold any water, because you cannot define it. Yeah. So and that's what Donald Hoffman's contribution to this theory of consciousness, that is the supreme, let's say more fundamental than the space-time. So this is what Donald Hoffman is saying, that he is coming to realization that in this 200 or 400 years of all these, mind and matter debate and mind and matter, let's say, fight, or shall I say quarrel, that this is materialistic. They are saying we are winning the war and we are winning this battle, and spiritually the mind proponent of mind are saying no, you can never rule out the mind. And that's what and somewhat that debate and that sort of war, that the fight between mind and matter, in that battle, materialistic proponents, they have lost their substantial ground, in that they have not been able to settle this debate by formulating that sort of a proposition that can be reasonably justified to even the simplest inquiry. Yeah, simply these materialistic proponents, they have bitten much more than they can swallow. Yeah, they should have just stayed by putting some disclaimer that all our theories stop at this particular end of the spectrum, and when it comes to the mental, when it hits to observation, when it hits to measurement, this is not our domain. All we describe the physical mechanism, processes, we describe the rules of the nature, and anything that is being measured by the conscious entities is not our domain. Our territory ends there. They did not stop there. They swallowed it. They started to claim that this physics can explain everything in reality. Somewhat they had eaten too much than they can swallow. So that's what the scientists like Donald Hoffman and the he has got a group, and Bernardo is kind of is challenging this sort of ridiculous assumptions, notions, by his very excellent ways of challenging them, which is in no way I can come up with that sort of same examples to refute that. So at least what I'm saying is the Professor Donald Hoffman and his team, they have somewhat realized that giving too much credit to space-time and considering space-time as being a fundamental reality is flawed, because space-time doesn't hold its fort. When the particles are, when you start to study those objects at the Planck scale, so when you try to measure the object, that is 10 to the power minus 33 centimeter, and if you want to characterize, then they cannot be characterized in the space-time, because the very notion of measurement of that entity or that particle will be destroyed because you simply run out of space-time, because that measurement cannot be performed. You are trying to measure that particular object, and the very laws of physics, or that let's say laws of it's like you are trying to measure your weight without having to resort to any apparatus. How can you do that? It's simply, you cannot do that. You have to have some ground, and that ground is gone. Yeah. So space-time doesn't hold any water. When you try to measure an object at 10 to the power minus 33 centimeter or below, so that means space-time is not that sort of fabric which is universal in all scale. Yeah. So it's scale. It is a very, let's say, if you want to measure, let's say 0.1 gram of a matter, and if you scale only can measure, let's say 1 gram, that means that scale is no good. It's simply the margin of error, the whatever you're measuring is simply the 10th order of magnitude grosser than the measurement that you're trying to achieve. So that's why this kind of space-time loses its ground at that particular, in that subatomic level of the Planck scale. Yeah, so it's kind of Planck scale is much smaller than the subatomic particles, I think, but somewhat, it's kind of, that makes it quite illusory that space-time is mere concept. It's not a fundamental property of the nature, and space-time is just a concept. It just goes out a window. Yeah. So and then that led us, that led him to realize that if space-time is not fundamental, then what is beyond space-time? And beyond the space-time, somewhat that if I want to bring some notion, bring some ideas from the Buddhist kind of literature. Even the Buddha said, when you go beyond the matter, beyond the kind of perception of matter, then after you let go of matter, you arrive at the space. The emptiness of space is called infinite space, the domain of infinite space. So that domain of infinite space is also perception. That's what the Buddha says. That means it's just a perception. It's nothing there. That space, the experience of space is just a perception. And the Buddha says that, okay, because that is just perception, why you hold on to this perception? Because that perception is your reaction to the phenomenon. Why are you holding with the space as some sort of a notion? You have to let that go. And because it is a perception, you release and you relax, and that space also goes away. Because it has ceased, that means it's not a reality. And what the Buddha says, when you let go of space, then it brings you to another reality. It's not a fundamental reality. It's just a relative reality, which is called the infinity of the consciousness. So that means beyond the space, when you let go of space and space has gone, then there remains only consciousness. Yeah, and consciousness and whatever behind the consciousness. So that consciousness is what and that experience is called infinity of consciousness. So it's kind of the space, the perception of space disappears because space is not fundamental and space is just fabrication, it's just concept. And then when you have let go of that concept of space, then you are left with the perception of the infinity of space. Note the word perception. Yeah. So what does that mean? Is perception is there. Yeah. So this consciousness is also perception. Yeah. So then it's not a theory. It's not a theory of consciousness. It's not a theory of space, time. It's not a theory of. It's just the observation of experience. So that means I did not invent this. I didn't invented the space. I didn't invent the consciousness. I simply stated, or what the Buddha simply stated what he saw in his observation, and this is exactly what we see. When you do the introspection, when you do your observation of your mind, you see this. It's not only me. There are thousands of kind of a meditator who knows that. Is that when you have let go of the notion of space, the infinity of space goes away, and it is gonna be replaced by the notion of infinity of consciousness, and that is just a perception. What does that? What that means is consciousness is just a perception, and somewhat we go far beyond that. We go beyond the infinity of the consciousness, and even that infinity of consciousness is let go of, then there is a perception of nothingness. And that perception of nothingness is void of nothing. It is void of anything. It's just perception of nothingness. There is no such thing. There is nothing. Yeah, it's just voidness of being experience. It's just experience, but there is nothing. And even that is transcended. Then we have got a. Then you are because that is the perception. You see that notion there for perception of nothingness. So there is perception tagged to the nothingness as well. And when you go beyond that, is you arrive at the neither perception nor non-perception. Now that perception is somewhat is flaky. That perception is no more able to hold the ground. That because that perception is a fake, perception is a veil. Perception is a some sort of thin kind of veil of let's say our personalization, our sort of notion, our conceptualization. So that is the thin filament of that sort of our concept that is remaining in the base, that the neither perception nor non-perception. And you also let that be, let that go. Then the Buddha says, when you have let go of that, even the small that flaky perception of the neither perception nor non-perception, that means your whole notion of the universe and any dependence of your mental observation that you are perceiving, that you are imagining, all your imagination, perception, conceptualization, all they collapse. Then that whatever experience that we had of this universe goes away. So that means there will be complete blank, your void. It's not void, it's complete cessation of perception, feeling, and consciousness. That means the letting go of everything. And that is where, when you have let go of anything, everything, all these notions, that there is nothing else to let go of. That's it. That's where the Buddha went and came back. Then that is what the Buddha's path is about, and that's what I do practice, and I do kind of have that sort of first-hand experience of that sort of experiences. So in this context, is that all I'm saying is that yes, consciousness is more fundamental than space, and consciousness is gonna be remaining even if you have let go of space. So it's kind of a yeah, I mean, I suppose fabrication of our experiences, because I mentioned even this notion of space is a fabrication. It's not a real foundation of our our reality. And space, as I mentioned, even with a thought process, that it doesn't hold any ground. That if space was a real kind of framework of this universe, then we are living in that infinitely undefinable, unreal universe, because it keeps going. Where is that sort of a solid thing that you can take that sort of you can actually you can sense that you are living in a real universe. What this shows that all these infinite number of galaxies and all this, they are simply concepts. They just they do not come, even it just becomes your imagination. Whatever is outside the visual universe is just your imagination. Yeah. So that's why space is not it's just what is called, it's just a lens or some sort of, and Professor Donald Hoffman, he calls space-time a headset, which is very, very good and apt example. And that means it is just a convention, it is just a way to do our daily transactions in the language, in that manner that we all can understand. So simply that way we can do our things easily, without confused about all this Planck scale and that sort of. Where in the Planck scale, is it 10 to the power plus 50 you are is gonna be there? We don't at least don't need to worry about that sort of scale. Yeah, it's kind of, if we consider Planck scale is our, let's say, yardstick for this consciousness, that's awareness of space, then yeah, it just gives that space in terms of general, that sort of meaning in carrying out our daily activities, mundane activities. So that's what I thought that it's kind of, space-time is doomed. That's what the kind of latest kind of status report of the science is. There is a desperate need to find a theory that can seemingly can provide the kind of ground to safe land this theory of space-time. Just where do we land this space-time in the Planck scale? There is no theory that you can take a refuge on. So that's what the Professor Donald Hoffman is trying to build a grand theory of consciousness causally, not causally, I'm saying, I must have, I would say causally, yeah, not although I hear the word like space-time arising from consciousness, I do not find it quite convincing that you can generate a perception of space and perception of time from consciousness, but consciousness as an entity that generating space-time as a child or some sort of a product may be untenable. So say I read the paper, and there are two papers. One is on the theory of consciousness, conscious agent, and now he has produced a theory of fusion of consciousness. So this paper on the conscious agents is basically he's formulating that sort of a principle, a kind of a scaffolding to place this theory of consciousness into a foundation. So driving that sort of primitive model of let's say conscious agent, which has got conscious agent having a perception, conscious agent having an action, and conscious agent having decision. So these three properties of conscious agent. And why three? Why consciousness can perceive? Why conscious agent can act? And why conscious agent can decide? What is the kind of model? Is this a kind of a ultimate model, or it is the most primitive model, or is this a sort of a intermediate model until we find some ultimate model? So it just it is just a concept, yeah. So it's kind of conscious agent is a concept that is being tried to put into that sort of a framework to say that you can build a network of trillions of conscious agents that would simulate some sort of a kind of experience in that sort of Markov chain, let's say, just a matrix, isn't it? It's just you put a Markov chain and you define some probabilities, and those probabilities, if you put some causal kind of interaction between those objects, of the conscious agent, then you can seemingly create all those experiences, including the space-time. So space-time is just an experience that we can use to look at the physical world, and that scaffolding of consciousness, if it is built in a very, very sophisticated manner, then it can account for all these experiences of space and time. Because if you have got a trillion by trillion size of matrix, you can do all sort of permutation, and if you do all sort of you can account for, let's say, you can take the inverse of that matrix, and you can change your perception, or you can take the kind of a, let's say, if that is a diagonal matrix, or if it is a orthogonal matrix, you can cancel each other. That means some experiences might be like that. You completely forget what was there. So if you fuse two consciousnesses that have got orthogonal properties, then you are not left with any consciousness, because they cancel each other. So yes, you can develop that sort of a mathematical relation of the conscious agent to come up with that sort of a theory that that can describe the colors, describe the kind of the taste of some chocolates, or the bitter taste of some medicine. It's just the matrix. You play with those values of the Markov chain matrix, and here you go. So that is the conscious agent theory, to kind of build a foundation for experience of space-time. And now he's marrying up that with the what is called this there are some physicists that have taken the lab experimental results from the particle collision labs in CERN, like that it's kind of I think this gluon and muon smashing each other. Let's say if you smash them and create that sort of simulate their resultant behavior, then that is quite a complex mathematics, and somewhat that complex mathematics can be solved if you let go of space-time and use that sort of geometrical concepts beyond the space-time that are called amplitude hadrons, which are like some sort of, let's say, multi-dimensional polygons that somewhat your particle interaction can be, when they are superimposed, that can be represented by that sort of geometrical shapes rather than the mathematical equations. And this amplitude hadron can be, and what the latest development is, amplitude hadron is that can have trillions of dimensions to that can account for all the kind of particle interactions. That means the reality in the complete sense. So that is that amplitude hydra can be the shape and size, or the shape and the properties of that amplitude hydra can be characterized by so-called decorative permutation. So decorative permutation is, again, you are playing that sort of numbers, the entries in that matrix, where you cannot just impose some sort of random, let's say, you cannot shuffle them like a random number. But decorative permutation is you are allowed to make permutation in some certain allowed move. So once you use them within allowed permutation, then that decorative permutation can define the amplitude hydra of any characteristics which correspond to all kind of physical particle interaction that we can evidence in the lab today. So that is the most fundamental experiment that ties consciousness with the space-time and the particles at the particle level. So that's what I have gathered from the work of Professor Donald Hoffman, which is really amazing, and it is a very, very sound, and it is a completely, let's say, it's a radical, and it is a very, very bold step to challenge that sort of notion of space, time, and material, that to challenge that dogma of material universe can generate all the experiences, which is quite an absurd kind of a statement to make, and that's the kind of, that's where the this new theories are contribution to the science to move ahead and make progress in science that is suffering as its heaviest loss, because science is not able to make any move in the recent 50 years. It just hasn't made any progress at all. It's just failing in all directions. Somewhat, the physicists, they could not swallow that sort of the behavior that are being validated by quantum mechanics, that quantum mechanics has time and again proved that it's kind of your material particles, they don't have a solid, let's say, space-time locality. They are just potential, and that's what the quantum mechanics gave that sort of, from very, very, let's say, deterministic and a static description of the particles and the atoms and the matters in this space-time framework, it shook the ground of that matters and particles being some sort of like a ball or some sort of uh, in like a dots, like a some sort of a object that are suspended in space, some sort of that sort of a Lego type of notion that scientists like Max Tegmark and that sort of they think that matters are can be stuck in like a Legos like that. And the quantum physics, quantum mechanics completely dismantle that notion that matter and the space things can be characterized completely by having that sort of deterministic location and that sort of time. Just it showed that the reality is completely probabilistic. You cannot be absolutely sure that particle is there until you measure it. Only after you measuring it, that particles become manifest at that particular place. Until you measure it, it can be just anywhere. That's what the Erwin Schrodinger's equation, and Schrodinger found that that's how you that there is no such thing called particle. It's just wave, and he just said that when you measure, then it becomes a particle. Until you measure it, it's just a wave. And that sort of wave and particle duality of this nature of physical reality was kind of proven by Schrodinger, and Schrodinger somewhat knew that this quantum physics and quantum mechanics is implying that there is something far more fundamental than this particles, and that our model of reality using that sort of particle physics and that sort of space time cannot hold for much longer. And he somewhat he got I know, I think I know there are some books, and he was after some reality beyond space time, and he was he was influenced by the sort of Vedantas, and sort of he was saying that consciousness is more kind of is that's what the reality is in consciousness, not in the matter, and all these things. So he was becoming a bit more philosophical in his later years. So this is kind of I was trying to capture this all this kind of things, and the notion of reality, and what is the reality then, and is and I am all I'm saying is that consciousness can